The sniper's arrival. Staff Sergeant Maria Santos stepped off the transport helicopter onto the dusty ground of Forward Operating Base Mongoose, her Barrett .50 caliber rifle case slung across her shoulder. The Afghan sun blazed overhead as she surveyed her new assignment. Around her, Marines went about their daily routines, but she could feel their curious stares following her movements. At 28, Maria had already earned a reputation as one of the finest marksmen in the Marine Corps. Her dark hair was pulled back in regulation style, and her olive-green uniform bore the distinctive crossed rifle badge of a scout sniper. She had requested this deployment specifically, knowing that the mountainous terrain of eastern Afghanistan would test every skill she had learned during her 8 years of service. General Harold Morrison watched from his command post window as the new sniper made her way across the base. He was a grizzled veteran of 3 tours, with silver hair and deep lines carved by years of desert sun and battlefield stress. His aide, Captain James Fletcher, stood beside him holding a personnel file. "Sir, that's Staff Sergeant Santos," Fletcher said, flipping through the papers. "Top of her class at sniper school. Confirmed kills from Iraq and Syria. The Corps sent her here specifically for long-range reconnaissance and elimination of high-value targets." Morrison's jaw tightened as he turned away from the window. "I don't care what some paper pushers in Washington think we need, Captain. This is a man's war out here. These mountains will chew up anyone who isn't built for the fight. That rifle she's carrying weighs 30 pounds, and she'll be humping it through terrain that would break seasoned infantry." The general had commanded this sector for 18 months, watching good Marines come and go. He had seen too many casualties from Taliban ambushes in the rocky valleys and treacherous passes that surrounded their position. His skepticism wasn't personal against Santos, but born from experience watching soldiers pushed beyond their limits. Fletcher shifted uncomfortably. "Sir, her record speaks for itself. Longest confirmed kill in her previous deployment was 1,847 meters. The Barrett is specifically designed for extreme long-range engagements. Records don't mean much when you're pinned down by enemy fire," Morrison replied curtly. "Have her report to my office at 1,400 hours. I want to see what we're dealing with." Meanwhile, Maria was settling into her assigned quarters, a small room she would share with Corporal Lisa Zhang, a communications specialist. Zhang helped carry her equipment, clearly impressed by the massive rifle case and specialized gear. "I've never seen a Barrett up close," Zhang admitted as Maria began unpacking her equipment with practiced efficiency. "Is it true it can punch through armored vehicles?" Maria smiled as she carefully assembled her weapon for inspection. The Barrett M107 was indeed impressive, nearly 5 feet long with its distinctive muzzle brake and bipod legs. It's designed for long-range precision, not vehicle destruction, though it certainly has the power. The .50 BMG rounds can reach targets at extreme distances with devastating accuracy. She explained how she had spent months training with the weapon system, learning to account for wind drift, temperature variations, and the complex ballistics involved in extreme-range shooting. Each shot required careful calculation of multiple variables, and success demanded not just marksmanship skills, but also patience and mental discipline. The longest confirmed sniper kill on record is over 3,500 meters, Maria continued, checking the rifle's scope alignment. "That's more than 2 miles. At those distances, you're not just fighting the target, you're fighting physics itself." Zhang watched with fascination as Maria demonstrated the weapon's features. The rifle's bipod provided stability for prone shooting positions, while the powerful scope allowed for target identification and engagement at distances where enemies appeared as mere specks to the naked eye. That afternoon, Maria knocked on General Morrison's office door and entered when called. The general looked up from a map covered with colored pins marking known Taliban positions and recent incident reports. "Staff Sergeant Santos reporting as ordered, sir," she said, standing at attention. Morrison studied her for a long moment before speaking. "At ease, Sergeant. I'll be direct with you. I didn't request a sniper, and I'm not convinced we need one. This isn't some Hollywood movie where one shooter changes everything. We're fighting an insurgency in some of the most difficult terrain on Earth." Maria remained composed, having faced similar skepticism throughout her career. "Sir, I understand your concerns. I'm here to provide precision fires and reconnaissance capabilities to support your mission requirements. My role is to complement your existing forces, not replace them. The general walked to a large topographical map mounted on the wall, pointing to various locations marked in red. See these positions? Taliban observation posts and fighting positions carved into mountainsides at elevations above 8,000 feet. They can see our patrols coming from miles away and have multiple escape routes through caves and valleys we can't effectively cover with conventional forces. He continued explaining the tactical situation facing his Marines. The enemy had adapted to American firepower by positioning themselves at extreme ranges where standard infantry weapons were ineffective. Close air support was often limited by weather conditions and the risk of civilian casualties in populated areas. Your Barrett might have the range, Morrison admitted, but can you make the shots that matter when Marines are depending on you? When lives hang in the balance, and there's no second chance. Maria met his gaze steadily. Sir, I've been making shots that matter for 8 years. I understand the weight of responsibility that comes with this weapon and this position. I'm not here to prove anything to anyone. I'm here to bring Marines home safely. The general's expression softened slightly. Despite his reservations, he could see the quiet confidence and professionalism that had earned Santos her reputation. Very well, Sergeant. You'll be assigned to Lieutenant Colonel Martinez's sector. He's been requesting long-range support for operations in the Karangal Valley. Over the following weeks, Maria integrated herself into the base's operational rhythm. She spent hours studying topographical maps and intelligence reports, identifying potential firing positions and engagement zones. Her daily routine included physical training to maintain the stamina needed for mountain operations and extensive practice sessions with her rifle. The Barrett required constant maintenance in the harsh desert environment. Dust and sand could jam the semi-automatic action, while temperature extremes affected the rifle's zero and the performance of ammunition. Maria meticulously cleaned and calibrated her weapon system, understanding that mechanical failure during a critical moment could cost lives. She also worked closely with forward observers and intelligence personnel to understand enemy movement patterns and identify high-value targets. The Taliban fighters in this region were experienced and cunning, using the mountainous terrain to their advantage while avoiding direct confrontation with superior American firepower. Lieutenant Colonel Martinez briefed her on his unit's area of responsibility, a stretch of valleys and ridgelines where Taliban forces regularly ambush supply convoys and patrol units. We've been taking casualties from positions we can't effectively engage, he explained, showing her recent incident reports. IEDs and ambushes from elevated positions beyond the range of our organic weapons. Maria studied the terrain features carefully, noting the extreme distances involved. Many of the documented enemy positions were located 2,000 to 3,000 meters from the nearest accessible friendly positions. Engaging targets at those ranges would require perfect conditions and flawless execution. Sir, I can provide overwatch for your operations, but I'll need advance notice to position myself properly. Shots at these ranges require extensive preparation and favorable weather conditions. During her first month at FOB Mongoose, Maria accompanied several patrol units as an observer, learning the ground truth that maps and briefings couldn't provide. She experienced firsthand the challenging terrain and the constant threat of enemy observation and attack. The mountains rose sharply from narrow valleys, with rocky outcroppings providing countless hiding places for enemy fighters. The altitude affected everything from breathing to weapon performance, while the thin air reduced the effectiveness of helicopter support and complicated medical evacuations. Maria also built relationships with the Marines she would be supporting. She shared meals in the dining facility, participated in physical training sessions, and joined evening discussions about tactics and experiences. Gradually, the initial skepticism gave way to cautious acceptance as her professionalism and knowledge became apparent. Corporal Zhang became a close friend and unofficial liaison with other base personnel. She's not what I expected, Zhang told other Marines. She knows her stuff, and she's not trying to prove how tough she is. She just wants to do her job and help keep us safe. The breakthrough moment came during a routine patrol briefing when intelligence reported a suspected Taliban commander moving through a remote valley system. The target had been linked to several recent attacks and represented a high-value elimination opportunity. Problem is, Lieutenant Colonel Martinez explained, our nearest approach puts us 2,800 meters from his suspected position. That's well beyond effective range for our designated marksman, and close air support isn't available due to weather conditions. Maria studied the satellite imagery and topographical data carefully. The shot would be at the very limit of her weapon system's capabilities, requiring perfect execution under combat conditions. Wind reading would be critical, as would precise range estimation and ballistic calculations. Sir, I can make that shot if conditions are favorable, she said quietly. But I'll need a spotter and security element. At those ranges, even a slight miscalculation could result in a miss. General Morrison, who had been listening to the briefing, remained skeptical. Sergeant, that's almost 3 kilometers. In these mountains, wind conditions change constantly. Even if you had a perfect setup, the chances of success are minimal. Despite his doubts, the mission was approved. Maria began intensive preparation, studying weather patterns, calculating ballistic solutions, and identifying potential firing positions. She would have one opportunity to prove that precision marksmanship could be a decisive factor in their ongoing campaign against Taliban forces. The stage was set for a confrontation that would test not only Maria's skills, but also challenge the preconceptions of everyone who doubted whether one shooter could make a difference in the brutal reality of mountain warfare. The true test of her abilities was about to begin. The mission unfolds. 3 weeks had passed since Maria's arrival at FOB Mongoose, and the morning briefing on October 15th carried an unusual tension. Intelligence Officer Captain Rebecca Walsh spread aerial photographs across the table as senior staff gathered around. We have confirmed movement of Khalid Hassan, the Taliban subcommander responsible for the convoy attacks near Checkpoint Delta, Walsh began, pointing to satellite images. He's traveling with a small security detail through the Shahiko Valley, approximately 40 kilometers northeast of our position. Lieutenant Colonel Martinez leaned forward, studying the photos. That's rough country. Multiple escape routes, elevated firing positions, and civilian compounds scattered throughout the valley floor. How current is this intelligence? 6 hours old, sir. Our sources indicate Hassan is meeting with local tribal leaders to coordinate winter supply routes. This represents our best opportunity to eliminate a significant threat to our operations. General Morrison examined the topographical overlay, his weathered face showing the concentration of years spent reading terrain. The closest we can position ground forces puts us nearly 3 kilometers from the target area. Our standard designated marksman rifles are ineffective at that range, and helicopter insertion isn't viable due to the anti-aircraft threat. Maria had been listening quietly, mentally calculating distances and angles from the maps. The proposed firing position was a ridgeline designated Hill 876, which offered clear lines of sight across the valley, but required a dangerous overnight movement through potentially hostile territory. Sir, she interjected carefully, I can engage targets at that range with proper preparation and favorable conditions. The Barrett is specifically designed for extreme distance precision fires. Morrison turned to her with obvious skepticism. Sergeant Santos, you're talking about a shot approaching 3,000 meters. In mountainous terrain with unpredictable wind patterns. Even our best designated marksmen wouldn't attempt such an engagement. Captain Fletcher, who had been reviewing technical specifications, looked up from his tablet. Sir, the M107's maximum effective range against personnel is listed as 1,800 meters. This target would be well beyond manufacturer specifications. Maria remained composed despite the doubt surrounding her. Sir, effective range specifications are conservative estimates based on average conditions and shooter capabilities. Under optimal circumstances, with proper preparation and environmental factors, the weapon system can perform significantly beyond those parameters. She had spent countless hours training for exactly these scenarios. The mathematics of long-range shooting became exponentially more complex beyond 2,000 meters, requiring precise calculation of bullet drop, wind drift, air density, and Coriolis effect. Each variable had to be accounted for with mathematical precision. Lieutenant Colonel Martinez studied the mission parameters. Even if the shot is technically possible, we're talking about inserting a small team into hostile territory overnight. The approach route crosses two known Taliban movement corridors. The tactical challenge was significant. Maria would need to reach the firing position under cover of darkness, establish a concealed hide site, and wait for the target to appear. The insertion team would include a spotter, security element, and communications specialist for coordination with higher headquarters. I volunteer to lead the security detail, said Gunnery Sergeant Mike Rodriguez, a veteran infantry leader with extensive combat experience. My squad has operated in that sector before. We know the terrain and enemy patterns. General Morrison walked to the large map display, tracing potential movement routes with his finger. Despite his reservations about the mission's feasibility, he understood the strategic importance of eliminating Hassan. The Taliban commander had orchestrated attacks that killed or wounded dozens of coalition personnel. If we proceed with this operation, Morrison said slowly, it will be a one-shot opportunity. Miss, and Hassan disappears back into the mountains for months. Worse, we'll have revealed our capabilities and given away a prime firing position. Walsh spread additional intelligence photos across the table. Sir, Hassan typically travels in civilian vehicles with minimal security. He relies on blending with normal traffic patterns and the difficulty of targeting him at extreme ranges. He doesn't expect precision fires from distances beyond conventional weapon capabilities. The intelligence picture showed Hassan's pattern of movement through the valley system. He would approach the meeting location from the south, traveling a dirt road that passed through open terrain approximately 2,847 meters from Hill 876. The window of opportunity would last no more than 15 minutes. Maria reviewed the ballistic calculations on her field computer. At 2,847 meters, a .50 caliber match-grade bullet would take nearly 4 seconds to reach the target. During that time, wind conditions along the entire flight path would affect bullet trajectory. Even a 5-mile-per-hour crosswind could push the projectile several feet off target. Sir, I'll need detailed meteorological data for the entire area of operations, Maria explained. Temperature, humidity, barometric pressure, and real-time wind measurements at multiple elevations. I'll also require at least 3 hours in position before the engagement window to properly range the target area. The technical requirements were demanding. Maria's spotter, Corporal David Kim, would use a laser rangefinder to confirm exact distances while monitoring atmospheric conditions. Every measurement had to be precise, as small errors would be magnified exponentially across the extreme range. General Morrison remained unconvinced. Sergeant, I appreciate your confidence, but this isn't a training exercise. If you miss, not only do we lose Hassan, but we potentially compromise future operations in this area. Are you absolutely certain you can make this shot? Maria met his gaze directly. Sir, I can't guarantee success, but I can guarantee that I'll execute the mission to the best of my abilities with the highest standards of professionalism. The shot is within the theoretical capabilities of the weapon system and my training. The debate continued for another hour as staff officers examined every aspect of the proposed mission. Insertion routes, contingency plans, extraction procedures, and communication protocols were all carefully reviewed. The risk was substantial, but the potential payoff justified the attempt. Finally, Morrison made his decision. Mission approved. Insertion tonight at 2,300 hours. Santos, you'll have your chance to prove that sniper can be more than just another infantryman with a big rifle. The afternoon was spent in intensive preparation. Maria conducted final checks of her weapon system, ensuring perfect mechanical condition. Every component was inspected and tested: the rifle action, scope mounting system, bipod stability, and ammunition selection. She would carry only 5 rounds, each one hand-loaded for maximum accuracy. Corporal Kim reviewed spotting procedures and communication protocols. As her primary observer, he would be responsible for target identification, range confirmation, and environmental monitoring. Their partnership required absolute trust and seamless coordination under combat stress. Gunnery Sergeant Rodriguez briefed his 6-man security detail on movement routes and contingency procedures. The team would carry lightweight equipment to maximize mobility while providing adequate firepower for self-defense. Their primary mission was protecting Maria and Kim while they prepared and executed the shot. Equipment weight was carefully calculated. Maria's Barrett rifle, scope, and ammunition totaled 37 pounds, while her additional gear brought the load to nearly 60 pounds. In the high-altitude terrain, every ounce would matter during the 6-kilometer movement to the firing position. Weather forecasts showed favorable conditions with light and variable winds, but mountain weather could change rapidly. Maria studied historical data for the target area, noting patterns of wind direction and velocity at different times of day. The engagement was planned for mid-morning when atmospheric conditions were typically most stable. As evening approached, the insertion team gathered for final briefings and equipment checks. Each Marine understood the mission's importance and the challenges they would face. The success or failure of the operation would depend on every team member performing flawlessly under extreme pressure. Maria took time for personal preparation, cleaning her rifle one final time and conducting mental rehearsals of the engagement sequence. She visualized every aspect of the shot: target acquisition, range confirmation, wind reading, breath control, and trigger squeeze. Mental preparation was as critical as physical skills for extreme range marksmanship. Captain Walsh provided final intelligence updates. Hassan was confirmed to be moving toward the meeting location and would likely pass through the engagement area between 0900 and 0930 hours the following morning. Weather conditions remained favorable, with light winds and clear visibility predicted. At 2200 hours, the team conducted final equipment checks and received last-minute intelligence updates. Maria's Barrett was carefully secured for movement, with the scope and sensitive components protected against impact damage. Each team member carried emergency medical supplies and survival equipment for potential extended operations in hostile territory. General Morrison appeared at the departure area as the team prepared to board their transport helicopter. Despite his continued skepticism about the mission's chances of success, he recognized the courage required to attempt such an operation. "Bring my Marines home safely, Gunnery Sergeant," he told Rodriguez. Then, turning to Maria, he added, "Sergeant Santos, prove me wrong." The helicopter lifted off into the darkness, carrying the team toward what would become one of the most challenging and significant sniper engagements in modern military history. Maria checked her equipment one final time as they flew through the mountain valleys, knowing that the next 12 hours would test every skill she had developed throughout her career. Below them, the rugged landscape of eastern Afghanistan stretched endlessly, hiding countless dangers and opportunities. Somewhere in that wilderness, Hassan was moving toward an appointment that would determine whether Maria's confidence in her abilities was justified or whether General Morrison's skepticism would prove prophetic. The mission had begun, and there would be no second chances. The shot heard across the valley. The helicopter touched down in a small clearing 6 kilometers from Hill 876 at 0130 hours, its rotors barely audible above the mountain winds. Maria and her team quickly disembarked, their equipment carefully distributed to minimize noise during the approach march. The pilot gave a thumbs-up signal before lifting off into the darkness, leaving them alone in hostile territory. Gunnery Sergeant Rodriguez took point as they began moving through the rocky terrain toward their objective. The team moved in single file, using night vision goggles to navigate the treacherous landscape of loose rocks and hidden ravines. Every step had to be carefully placed to avoid dislodging stones that could alert enemy observation posts. Maria carried her Barrett in a specialized case designed for tactical movement, the rifle broken down into major components to reduce its profile. The weapon size made it challenging to transport through the narrow mountain passes, but her years of training had taught her to move efficiently even with the substantial load. After 3 hours of careful movement, they reached the base of Hill 876. The final ascent required climbing nearly 300 meters of steep, rocky terrain while maintaining noise discipline. Rodriguez positioned 2 Marines as rear security while the remainder of the team established the firing position near the ridge crest. Maria began assembling her rifle with practiced efficiency, each component fitting together with mechanical precision. The Barrett's modular design allowed for field stripping when necessary, but reassembly required careful attention to ensure proper headspace and timing. Any mechanical issues could prove catastrophic during the critical engagement window. Corporal Kim established the spotting position 3 meters to Maria's left, setting up his high-powered spotting scope and laser rangefinder. From their concealed position among the rocks, they had an unobstructed view across the Shahiko Valley to the road where Hassan would appear. Range to target area confirmed at 2,847 meters, Kim whispered, reading his laser rangefinder display. Slight uphill angle of approximately 4 degrees. Wind appears calm at our position, but I can see dust movement in the valley, suggesting crosswind from the southeast. Maria adjusted her rifle's position on its bipod, aligning the scope with the target area. At maximum magnification, the dirt road appeared as a thin brown line cutting across the valley floor. Individual features were barely visible at such extreme range, requiring patient observation to distinguish vehicles from natural terrain features. The waiting began at 0500 hours. Maria had learned early in her career that patience was a sniper's most valuable skill. She settled into her firing position, controlling her breathing and heart rate while maintaining visual contact with the target area. Every few minutes, Kim updated environmental conditions and confirmed range readings. Rodriguez positioned his security team to cover the most likely avenues of approach to their position. The Marines established interlocking fields of fire while maintaining communication with higher headquarters through encrypted radio systems. Their primary concern was preventing enemy interference during the critical engagement window. At 0630 hours, the first signs of activity appeared in the valley below. Kim observed several vehicles moving along various roads, but none matched the intelligence description of Hassan's convoy. Each potential target had to be carefully evaluated to avoid engaging civilians or friendly forces. "I've got movement on the northern approach road," Kim reported quietly. 3 vehicles, appears to be civilian pickup trucks. Too early for our target window. Probably local farmers heading to market. Maria continued her methodical preparation, making minute adjustments to her scope settings based on current atmospheric conditions. The morning air was still cool, which would affect bullet velocity and trajectory. As the sun rose higher, temperature changes would alter the ballistic equation, requiring constant recalculation. The Barrett scope was zeroed for 1,000 meters under standard conditions. At 2,847 meters, the bullet would drop approximately 78 feet during its 4-second flight time. Maria had to aim significantly above her intended point of impact, using mil-dot markings in her scope to compensate for the extreme trajectory. At 0745 hours, radio traffic indicated that surveillance assets had confirmed Hassan's convoy leaving its overnight location. The Taliban commander was traveling in a white Toyota pickup truck with 2 escort vehicles, moving toward the meeting location as predicted by intelligence analysts. "Target convoy now approximately 20 minutes from our engagement area," Rodriguez whispered into his radio microphone. "All elements maintain security and prepare for immediate action upon target identification." Maria felt her heart rate increase slightly, but controlled her breathing to maintain steady aim. She had learned to manage pre-engagement stress through mental discipline and physical conditioning. The key to extreme range shooting was maintaining perfect consistency in body position, breathing pattern, and trigger control. Kim continued monitoring environmental conditions with his portable weather station. Wind velocity 2 to 3 miles per hour from the southeast. Temperature rising slowly, currently 42 degrees Fahrenheit. Barometric pressure steady at 29.85 inches. Every environmental factor affected bullet trajectory at extreme range. A 5-degree temperature change could shift point of impact by several inches. Wind conditions along the bullet's entire flight path had to be estimated based on visible indicators like dust movement and vegetation deflection. At 0856 hours, Kim spotted the first vehicle in Hassan's convoy entering the target area. "I have eyes on target convoy. Lead vehicle is white pickup truck matching intelligence description. 2 escort vehicles following at approximately 100-meter intervals." Maria acquired the target through her scope, watching the small white shape moving slowly along the dirt road. At 2,847 meters, The pickup truck appeared no larger than a grain of rice, requiring absolute precision to identify individual occupants. The engagement would depend entirely on Kim's positive identification of Hassan. Target vehicle stopped, Kim reported. Appears to be at the suspected meeting location. I can observe multiple individuals exiting vehicles, but I need clearer identification before confirming Hassan. Minutes passed as Kim studied the target area through his spotting scope. Intelligence had provided detailed physical descriptions of Hassan, but identifying specific individuals at such extreme range required patience and expertise. A misidentification could result in civilian casualties and mission failure. I have positive identification, Kim finally whispered. Hassan is standing approximately 10 meters north of the white pickup truck, speaking with two other individuals. He matches all physical descriptors and is wearing the blue jacket mentioned in intelligence reports. Maria acquired her target, placing the scope's crosshairs on Hassan's center mass while accounting for the massive bullet drop at such extreme range. The image wavered slightly due to atmospheric distortion, but she could clearly see the human figure standing near the vehicle. Range confirmed 2,847 meters. Wind conditions steady at 2 to 3 miles per hour from the southeast. Temperature 44 degrees and rising. I'm ready to engage on your command. Rodriguez confirmed that all security positions were manned and ready. The engagement window was rapidly closing as Hassan would likely complete his meeting and depart within minutes. Maria had one opportunity to make the most challenging shot of her career. Target appears to be concluding his meeting, Kim observed. Multiple individuals returning to vehicles. Hassan still stationary near the pickup truck, but this could change momentarily. Maria made her final ballistic calculations, accounting for air density at the high altitude, wind drift across the extended range, and the slight uphill angle to the target. She placed the crosshairs approximately 6 feet above Hassan's head to compensate for bullet drop, then shifted slightly left to counter the predicted wind drift. Send it, Rodriguez commanded quietly. Maria controlled her breathing, taking a deep breath and exhaling halfway before holding perfectly still. Her finger took up the slack in the Barrett's trigger, applying steady rearward pressure until the rifle fired with a thunderous roar that echoed across the mountainside. The massive .50 caliber bullet left the muzzle at 2,850 feet per second, beginning its 4-second journey across the valley. Maria maintained her sight picture, watching through the scope as the bullet traveled its invisible path toward the target. Time seemed suspended as the shot crossed the extreme distance. Kim tracked the bullet's impact through his spotting scope, while Maria remained motionless behind her rifle. At such extreme range, even confirming a hit required several seconds of careful observation. Target down, Kim called out suddenly. Positive impact. Hassan is down and not moving. Convoy vehicles are scattering. Appears to be complete confusion in the target area. Rodriguez immediately ordered the team to begin withdrawal procedures. The shot would certainly be investigated by Taliban forces, making their position extremely dangerous within minutes. They had to reach the extraction point before enemy reinforcements could cut off their escape routes. Maria quickly disassembled her Barrett while the security team prepared for movement. The successful engagement had eliminated a high-value target, but they still had to extract safely from hostile territory. The mission would not be complete until all team members returned to friendly lines. As they began their withdrawal, radio traffic confirmed that Hassan's death had been observed by multiple intelligence assets. The Taliban commander responsible for numerous coalition casualties would no longer threaten American and Afghan forces in the region. 3 hours later, the team reached their extraction point where helicopters waited to return them to FOB Mongoose. As they lifted off, Maria looked back at Hill 876, knowing that her shot had just set a new record for combat effectiveness at extreme range. General Morrison was waiting when they landed. His skeptical expression had been replaced by something approaching amazement. "Sergeant Santos," he said simply, "I owe you an apology. That was the finest piece of marksmanship I've witnessed in 30 years of military service." The shot at 2,847 meters had not only eliminated a significant enemy threat, but had also demonstrated the decisive potential of precision marksmanship in modern warfare. Maria's success would influence tactical doctrine and equipment procurement for years to come. But, perhaps more importantly, she had proven that skill, preparation, and courage could overcome even the most extreme challenges. The general who had scoffed at her Barrett .50 now understood that in the right hands, precision weapons could indeed change the course of military operations. Word of the record-breaking shot spread quickly through military channels, inspiring other snipers and validating the investment in advanced marksmanship training. Maria Santos had not only completed an impossible mission, but had also opened new possibilities for how American forces could engage their enemies in the complex battlefields of the future. The Barrett .50 had spoken across 2,847 meters of hostile territory, and its message had been received with absolute clarity.